And as Governor Ivey announced the statewide order, Madison County leaders are taking a closer look at our numbers. Our Sydney Stallworth has the latest on that.
We no longer will be an island in Madison County. The other communities around us and other counties will also be masking, and we hope that only helps our numbers here in Madison County.
Since the introduction of the Madison County masking ordinance, officials have kept a close eye on any changes in the spread. They cite some silver lining changes.
For the last 2 or 3 days, we have seen a flattening of number of hospitalized patients.
But those in the hospital are still at serious risk.
It has about a 30% rate of hospitalized patients needing to be in the ICU, and today our ventilator use rate of those patients in the ICU is actually at closer to 60% than the typical 30%. Testing positive rates are still hovering around 14 to 15%. That's slightly below the state average, but is a significant increase for us.
Madison County is a very high-risk zone in the state, and a group from the Federal Coronavirus Task Force has taken notice, and they're here to collect information.
The COVID-19 Response Assistance Field Team. They came in, I think, yesterday. They'll be here for a couple of days.
Kraft is here to do research on COVID-19 trends and needs in our area. Madison Mayor Paul Finley brought up some concerns that were shared with Kraft during this morning's meeting.
Testing and the reagents and the supplies that are needed. Remdesivir and the fact that it's making a difference, but sometimes we're concerned about the levels that are out there. Support of nursing homes, the federal guidelines for schools.
Mayor Finley says the need to improve communications of positive test results was also brought up to the federal field team. Putting the Valley first, Sydney Stallworth, WZDX News.